You are listening to Flop Culture. This is a podcast all about your favourite flops. And around here, flop's not a dirty word. A flop can be anything. I'm a flop, and I'm also your host, Fionnuala J. I hope you're welcome. I hope you're very well. It's actually what I meant to say, but I do hope you're welcome as well. Because they both mean the same thing, really. Anyway, I'm really glad to have you here. If you're not already following Flop Culture on social media, I'd love you to. We tease upcoming guests over there. It's at flopculture_pod on Instagram and TikTok. As well, I love ratings. Doesn't everyone love rating, girls? All I want for Christmas this year is some 5-star ratings, if you had them, wherever you're listening. If you are listening on Apple and you leave your nickname in the rating, I will recommend something to you, personalised to you, especially at the end of next week's episode. So get them in. I'd love to see them. Do you have a favourite episode? You can let me know that in the rating as well. Anything you'd like to see more of? Let me know that in the rating. I'm all for that. We are over on Patreon as well, patreon.com/flopculture. You'll get a minimum of 2 bonus episodes a month. And this month already, we have a journey through the Kardashian Christmas card phenomenon. Something that they don't really do anymore, but was a big thing for them as a family when the reality TV show kicked off. And then when they started, utilising social media a little bit more, it was a real thing with a capital T. So I brought in the big guns. I brought in past guest Carla Kay, and she is going through them with me. We're talking about them, where the family were at that point in time, reviewing the fashion. It's all good fun. And because obviously we're talking about visual cards, things that you can see, there's also a video podcast. So whether you want to listen to the audio or the video, they are both on Patreon. It's patreon.com/flopculture. This week, I'm sitting down with Cian Sullivan to record an episode of Bop or Flop on contemporary Christmas pop music. So that will be coming soon as well. Very excited for that. A reminder, because I forget to say this sometimes, some of the episodes are available to watch on YouTube as well, including this one. It's Fionnuala J, J-A-Y, on YouTube for the visuals, should you want them. You can also listen to the audio only there, but I know some people like the visuals. We've got the visuals. Unlike Beyonce, I've got the visuals. I know the movie came out, but they're not the visuals. She's not having me on. She's not pulling the wool over my eyes. Anyway, news. Let's talk about it. We almost had a Barbie with Anne Hathaway instead of Margot Robbie in the titular role. She was on a podcast this week called Happy Sad Confused and called it lucky that her iteration of the Barbie movie never got off the ground, considering the phenomenon that Margot's and Greta Gerwig's Barbie became this year. So in 2017, Anne Hathaway was initially announced as the star of Sony's Barbie movie. I think people are more familiar with the fact that Amy Schumer was once in the fold. So I think she was cast then. No, I've said this wrong. Apologies. I think people are more familiar with Amy Schumer's name being in the fold, but it was actually Anne who was originally cast. Anne Hathaway left and then Amy Schumer came in. And this was supposed to come out earlier. It was supposed to be June 2018, directed by Aletha Jones, an Australian filmmaker who is responsible for a movie called Fun Mom Dinner. Not something I'm familiar with, but a lot of sources were comparing it to Splash, Enchanted, Big, Fish Out of Water, the whatever, Barbie's Real, What Happens. To be honest, it kind of sounds much more similar to Life Size, the Tyra Banks movie, than anything else. But anyway, Anne left. Amy got her hands on the script and polished it up to become kind of the skeleton of what the movie ended up becoming. It's Barbie getting kicked out of Barbie World for not being perfect enough and landing in the real world. That project then went to ground and Margot was like, right, I'm taking over the rights and I'm going to Warner Brothers with it. And Anne said that was the right call. She said, what's so exciting about what Greta and Margot and the phenomenal team did is they hit a bullseye. The bullseye caused the entire world to reach this level of ecstasy. Now imagine that version, that much energy, that much anticipation, that much emotion, but it's not the right version. I actually think of it as a lucky thing it didn't get made. She calls Margot sublime, a really creative person, a producer, very exciting, inspiring. So yeah, I think she would have been a good Barbie, all the same. Amy Schumer. The thing with Amy Schumer is, right, I think a lot of the initial conversation around when it was like Amy was going to be Barbie, people get very mean about how Amy doesn't look like the typical Barbie, in inverted commas, which again was the whole conceit of the movie. yeah, I think people can get a little bit into nasty territory when talking about Amy, right? But then reading this, I was like, okay, right. She had initially said it was scheduling conflicts as to why she was the reason that she left the Barbie movie. But it was actually creative differences. She said Robbie's movie looked very feminist and cool, which her version was not. Which to even try and visualize what Amy means now, or like what version of that movie it would have been, I just can't even, it would have been dog shit. And I'm actually just going to say that right now. It would have been chronic. And also, she did kind of make a version of it anyway with that. I think she was trying to get at it with the movie I Feel Pretty, if anyone's familiar with that. If you're not, you don't need to be. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine. She said she should have known the Barbie project wasn't for her when the studio gifted her a pair of Manolo Blahnik shoes to celebrate her casting. There you go. I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. Bosses there at ITV are set to ban politicians, allegedly, after Nigel Farage claimed he was set up by ITV. He ended up finishing in third place. I think he got something like 25% of that final vote, which is categorically insane. But anyway, he's since accused ITV of stitching him up, accused the broadcaster of alleged unpleasantries with some of the higher-ups. So now the show bosses are considering a ban on politicians from future series. A source told The Sun, I'm a Celeb has always cast divisive characters, but now we think it'll be a case of thinking twice. Nigel's MO was all about making it seem like the establishment is against him, but no one expected it to become the hand that fed him. Now, there's a spokesperson for ITV has come out and said, you know, we're always looking for diverse people, whatever. And they've always featured political figures, and that there are no plans for it to change when the series returns next year, blah, blah, blah. But like, this has to be at what, like, and this was the issue with allowing Matt Hancock in, because it just opened this door of like, because look, I know people feel very much more strongly about Matt Hancock than I do. My bottom line is that I think he is an idiot, right? Like, fundamentally. But that's how it starts. You let someone in who kind of just appears to be this like blundering idiot type, and then he gets to come in and be like, oh, he's so silly. What a silly little boy. Oh, ha, ha, ha. And he can't. And he's, you know, he doesn't know things and he doesn't know songs. And isn't that hilarious? And then it opens it like he's like, I was about to say dehumanized. Rehumanized? He's rehumanized in the eyes of the public. And then you open the door to allow someone much more sinister, much more like divisive, obviously, but that's not even the word I'm thinking of. Sinister is probably the best word. Someone as sinister as Nigel Farage in to again be allowed to, it's just, it sets a really dangerous precedent in my opinion. Do I actually think anything's going to change? Probably not. And I don't know why anyone is surprised about Nigel Farage now coming out. He's on GB News talking that he faced stitch-ups from production bosses. It seems like whilst I was in the jungle, one or two people at the top of ITV were doing their best to make things unpleasant for me. He's particularly talking about Kevin Lygo, the director of television at ITV. And he says, what I will say to Kevin Lygo, the boss of ITV, it's up to you, mate. If you want to go toward me, you really can. The last person to do that was Dame Alison West from NatWest Bank. And look what happened to her. I have no idea what that means. That's all too British for me, but whatever. So I suggest, Mr. Lygo, that I'm prepared to ignore your rude, one-handed gestures, the rude, pathetic attempts from your staff to stitch me up. I'm prepared to forget all of this if we can call a truce. If you really want to go toward me, I don't think it would do ITV share prices a lot of good. Again, what are you talking about? What are you actually... grant me the arrogance of any man. Just it like... in a baffling that he thinks he holds that much influence over anything. Fucking hell. Man couldn't influence one of his own bowel movements. Do you know what I mean? Shut up. Shut up. Anyway, just, yeah. But I do think that I'm not saying we need to stop with politicians, right? That's not what I'm saying, because they are correct in that they've had, it's always been, as much as I disagree that, like, should politicians fall under the celebrity category? They're certainly famous. Are they celebrities? Not sure. But anyway, I just think you can have people in there with different views, but, like, sometimes the views do need to be called into question when they are inflammatory and dangerous, I would say. And that's just my opinion. And do ITV give a fuck about my opinion? Certainly not, girls. But anyway, next season, we'll see. A weird season. I know a lot of people are saying, I was very in and out. I didn't really watch it consistently. I know a lot of people are saying best ever, Sam, Tony having all those interactions, whatever. But a lot of darkness over it. Like, I think there's a lot to come out still about the treatment of Nella Rose, you know, reaction from kind of Fred Ciroux and stuff like that. I don't know. A bit of a weird one. Did you enjoy it? Let me know. helloflopculture@gmail.com. And finally, the Golden Globes. We cleaned up, girls. Half of the 6 nominees for Best Actor in a Drama Motion Picture at the 2024 Golden Globes are Irish. And most importantly, 1/6 of them are from Cork. Cillian Murphy, he's probably the favourite to win, playing nuclear physicist Oppenheimer in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. He's nominated. Barry Keoghan is nominated for his role in Saltburn, Emerald Fennell's Saucy Story. I have not watched yet. Please, no spoilers. I've managed to avoid a lot of them. I think if I've watched it in time, myself and Owen might talk about it a little bit on the Patreon. And if not, I might just let him talk about it. He's seen Wonka. He's going to talk about Wonka too. I'm excited for that. Andrew Scott, also up for his role in Andrew High's All of Us Strangers, in which he stars opposite Paul Mescal. Very excited to see all of them. And then in terms of more Irish goodness, Yorgos Lanthimos's Poor Things, which stars Emma Stone. I'm really excited to see it. It's actually produced by Element Pictures from Dublin. They're after getting 7 nominations, which is great. It's fab. And then Barbie is topping the charts. Barbie has 9 noms. Good for them. Oppenheimer follows with 8. Bit of a weird award ceremony, though. It just feels like it can't escape 2019 when a investigation from the Los Angeles Times found that there were a lot of unfair practice going on in terms of nominations and a huge lack of representation within the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Meant the show came off air for a year. It's now moving to a new network, so we'll see. Despite it all, I suppose some people would ask, like, why bother with it then? It's like a good indication for the Oscars. And it is also just a thing to be like, you know what I mean? It's a much broader award ceremony in terms of its categories now. I say that now, even though I know there's been a lot of critique around some of the female categories that they're not particularly diverse this year in terms of nominations. But the fact that the categories are split, you know, with comedy and drama, I don't know. Like, I'd like to see it come back and actually be a thing that's taken seriously again, but I just don't know if it ever will, especially apparently this year they're really struggling to find a host. They went and asked Chris Rock. Chris Rock was like, nope, these are all alleged, I should say. Went to comedian Ali Wong. She said no. They went to the guys that host Smartless, those 3 lads. I know they have names. I'm just not... there's too many names to say in succession quickly at this hour of the morning. They reportedly can't do it. Now, a spokesperson for the Golden Globes has come out and said, we're having 3 important conversations at the minute. So I think they will have a host. But then you're reading kind of other reports that hosts feel it's a very thankless job. And again, because it's not as like glitzy, ritzy, seen as important anymore as, again, the likes of the Emmys or the Oscars. So I don't know. They could it go hostless again? I hope they don't, because I kind of hate when they do that. It's not as interesting to me, but we'll see. I think Cillian has it, and I can't wait for his speech. His hopelessly awkward. I hope he cries. If there's one thing I love, it's seeing Irishmen cry of happiness. I'm not wishing misery on Irishmen. Am I? Actually, not sure. Maybe we'll come back to that and unpack that at some point. But I love... All I want is good. Now, I don't think he will cry now that I'm singing out loud. The thought of Cillian Murphy shedding just a single tear. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant, girls. Anyway, I did say that this was one of my favourite topics of this season. I stand by that, and I am so furiously excited to talk about this week's flop. Adaptations. They can be very, very tricky. Particularly when Adaptations can be very, very tricky. Particularly when the source material is as beloved as High Fidelity, the 1995 novel by Nick Hornby. It gets trickier again when said source material has already been adapted for the silver screen and has found a loving, cult, predominantly male audience. So what happens when you attempt to capture that same magic for television with a slightly rejigged main character, only for a pesky pandemic to scupper the whole plan anyway? Joining me to discuss High Fidelity, the 2020 television series, is singer-songwriter Senita Appiakorang. Enjoy. Senita Appiakorang, thank you so much for joining me on Flop Culture. How are you doing?
I'm great. No, thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you in my gaff for a gaff edition of Flop Culture.
You're very gracious that way.
Oh, I know. I mean, listen, we love it. I'll always open the door to chat about flops, you know. Talk to me about what you picked. I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm quite excited as well. I picked High Fidelity, so the TV series released in early 2020 with Zoe Kravitz as the main character. But there was a book and there was a movie.
Yes.
Which people might be more familiar with the movie.
Yes, so the novel was by British author Nick Hornby, first published in 1995, and then, as you said, it's probably the 2000 movie that people are most familiar with John Cusack. But I haven't read the book still.
Yeah.
I'd only just watched the movie as a result of this, but I watched the TV show first because I wanted to. Yeah, I wanted to go, because you'd picked it, I wanted to go in without the legacy of the movie colouring what I thought of the show. And I'm really glad I did. And I will say, this is one of the few examples of when people come with flops or whatever and we do episodes on them.
Yeah.
Like, usually I'm like, yeah, it was pretty good. I fucking loved this. And it's one that I think I will recommend to everyone. And the minute I started watching it, I was you know, from episode 1, I was like, this is it. This is a bit of me.
Yeah.
I love it. When did you first watch it? Did you watch it during the pandemic?
I watched it during the pandemic, probably shortly after the hype of it.
Okay.
And then when I watched it, like, I felt like the name was familiar to me, but I didn't know why. I was just like, whatever. Like, sounds like it's part of the canon one way or another, don't know why.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I rewatched the movie for this, and I was like, oh, I've seen this, like, probably in my childhood. Like, if I felt like it was, you know, the way you had the, like, poverty channels, you'd have the same kind of, whatever, 10...
Just playing over and over
90s,
again.
90s movies in the canon, just, like, playing. So I felt like it felt part of my memory in that sense. And then when I rewatched it, I was like, this is familiar, but adult eyes on it, I was like, oh, God, like, why is this the one that's, like, classic, celebrated? There's a bit of rah-rah-rah about the TV series by comparison to it. And why did we not get a continuation of the TV series? I was very annoyed.
I mean, it's just devastating. Like,
it is,
one and done season, Zoe Kravitz leading the pack.
Yes.
I adored it, and I'm so frustrated that it didn't get the second season that it deserved.
I wish I had watched it in reverse, even though I kind of did, because my memory only really serves me as to, like, the TV series more so, and I was comparing it to that. But curious as to, like, what brought you in straight off?
I'm a big music lover anyway. And I loved the fourth wall breaks. So, like, for anyone that's not familiar, the TV series follows Rob, who's Zoe Kravitz plays.
Yeah.
She runs this record shop. She's really into vinyl.
Yeah.
And she's kind of going through all her past relationships and her past heartbreaks, following this kind of monumental heartbreak. And we learn why it's monumental with this guy called Mac. And you're meeting her friends that she also works with in the record shop with, and, like, her family dynamics and stuff like that. It was very kind of, like, I'm also watching Fleabag at the minute, so I found that was interesting. It's very Fleabag-esque, but I loved, like, the music pop culture references. I thought the writing was very sharp. I thought the performances are really good. Davine Joy Randolph as like the Jack Black Barry character.
Perfect.
Inspired.
Well aligned.
I'm obsessed with her. She was even like Wasted in the Idol. Perfect. Like
I was just thinking, I was like, what a like disappointing trajectory. The only other thing I'd seen her in was in the fucking
you can swear. Oh, okay, absolutely, swear away.
On the Idol, and even at that, like, just glimpse. I also stopped watching it halfway through, to be fair, but I'm sure.
And that was the correct call, because it does not get better.
I genuinely was just like, I don't know if I have the patience for this, but I probably will at some point come back to it, because like that, I was like, there are people in this I really want to support and I love in this, but it was anyway.
She's great in this. Yeah, I found her as a character, Rob, really dynamic. I loved that kind of flawed protagonist, antagonist. You're kind of rooting for them, you're kind of not.
Yeah.
I just felt it was really, the world was very well built out. The use of music is obviously really clever.
Stunning. Questlove was on that.
Yeah, like
consultant.
It didn't, I feel now, obviously it's only like 2-3 years old, whatever, but it didn't feel ham-fisted in the way that I think a lot of like contemporary shows can be when you're talking about pop culture. I don't know, I just fucking... But like, what was your first reaction when you watched it, especially having watched the movie as well and having that comparison? Because for me, I just went to the movie and I was like, I get why it was so big at the time, and like John Cusack, okay, hot, whatever, maybe to some people, I don't know, but I just remember
everyday man hot.
Everyday man hot,
excessively hot,
excessively hot, but I just remember thinking there's nothing likable about his character in High Fidelity, the movie. No, or what do you think?
So this is the thing, like I was genuinely like, was this like legitimately a flop, as in my definition being a flop of like it was cancelled but I enjoyed it, and I talked to a couple of friends and they liked it, but they'd all be kind of like people that really like music and Zoe Kravitz. But yeah, I was wondering as to whether like on a kind of more wider viewing audience, whether it seemed a bit wanky. And that's actually like ultimately my question is like, can someone reckon with me, set me straight? Am I a bit of a wanker for liking it, you know? Because like, so a couple of things that really resonated for me. I love vinyl, love music, all of that stuff. I also am just a fan of Zoe Kravitz. She's just like unfathomably cool to be fair.
Look, Nepo baby she is, but like she's good. Like,
she owns it.
She eats in this. Like she's relatable, but she's unlikable. And it goes back to, you're rooting for her, you want to pick her up and shake her, you know?
Yeah.
She is a very good actor. I'll give her that. Like.
She does, yeah. And I think that like, I felt like this is the most believable role that I'd seen her in. Like she kind of plays a slightly like cool, unlikable character in a couple of different shows. I'm thinking, is it Big Little Liars with Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon and a couple of...
I actually haven't seen that, which I know is like... I'm going to keep desperate, sorry. Yeah.
No, I literally only recently watched it.
Yeah, it's on the list. It's on the ever-growing list.
It'll be good when you tap in. There's a lot of drama there. I feel like it's a vibe, yeah. But she kind of plays like... She has a prototype, and I felt like this was just the most fitting prototype that was exactly what you mentioned, like timely, and kind of like... Because of the fact that it's lending this story that... you know, was popular in the 90s with this kind of, I'm going to call him like sad boy, fuck boy vibes, but like no one would have tagged him as that at that time. I feel like it's the time like, you know, where, I don't know, dudes being like into alternative and asking questions like, hey, like what are you thinking about really? Like, I just want to get to know you, girl. You know, like that brand of guy that was maybe like the alter to the macho 90s dude was popular, and that gave birth to the Adam Brodys and like this whole like generation of like geek hotties.
Sad soft boys,
that we all loved in the early noughties. Like that's just like the epitome of that era, and I feel like that's probably why it was celebrated. Like it felt very accessible to the guys that were like, I've got lots of girlfriends but they don't like me for me, and they like the jock and they're like so misguided, whatever. So I felt like this, like the TV series version of it, and why it resonated with me was because I was conflicted with it. Like on some level I was like, this, I feel like it resonates with me because it felt familiar, actually, because in Cork, hometown.
Yes.
Lived there for 10 years. In Triskel, there was a record shop / restaurant, Gulped and Plugged. Don't know if you ever remember.
Yes, I do, yeah.
So like John Cusack's character from that somewhat reminded me of Jimmy. Sorry, Jimmy, to name you out now in flop culture. You're not a flop, but there are echoes of the story that I was like, this is so close to home.
Yeah.
Because he is like this grumpy, kind of like nonchalant, cool, like he loves real music. If you ask him what he likes, and he's not going to go into like specifics about who and what he's listening to.
Yeah, like he's very like, this is good pop, this is bad pop.
Exactly.
And he's like Tina Turner in the bad pop. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. What do you know?
Exactly.
Rob.
Yeah, exactly.
Shut up.
Like the Beatles were popular for a reason. Harry Styles' quote about girls, you know, basically taste making and it being good. But yeah, it really like reminded me of that scene. I felt that I could imagine that in a Cork setting or in any kind of Puritan music like city. Like it's based in Chicago. Cork kind of feels like that to me in some ways, coming from the music scene as being like a counterculture to like the things that are popular. Like and everyone there is very proud of what they do, rightly so. But it felt like genuinely real to have conversations with other musicians that were really like dismissive in some way, but also like sadly romantic about not being accepted by all the hotties that they want to be aligned with. And I'm like, yeah, girls, like you can't have the best of both worlds. So it felt familiar in that sense. But then like the New York version with Zoe Kravitz as Rob was just a nice flip of dynamic, because all the flaws in the movie, which I like retrospectively saw and found annoying because they were just really vapid as well. They were like a little bit more substantiated. Like she's this hottie. You're kind of wondering like, how the fuck are we supposed to believe that you, Zoe Kravitz, are not loved in New York City and have like men pounding at your door? But also it really does resonate with like dating culture now. It's like, you know, people can have the ick over things that you're kind of like, is this really a deal breaker? Like, it really kind of captured a little bit of like dating culture now and the void and sadness of it, but also the opportunity to be meeting, 10 different people and kind of the story that you tell about yourself and why you're not like out there experiencing it. And in New York as well, you'd experience like that's probably, or you'd assume rather that that's probably one of like the best places to be dating in the world, right? But it was I don't know, it was like a bit of a transportative dive into like what would it be like to be Zoe Kravitz in New York, having a big heartbreak moment and just being kind of annoying but totally relatable.
Yeah. I love it. Like, it is just, it's very vibey, it's very cool. I want to live in the apartment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was something like deeply comforting about it, even though it's so far away from my own world and so unrelatable in that way. But I could see shards of myself and shards of the life that I have lived in her. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, like, not being funny, of course I'm going to look at John Cusack's Rob, a 30-year-old man, and be like, well, this story doesn't fucking speak to me at all, because he's like this kind of toxic masculine, like, trope of a man. And I get, like, again, maybe I'd feel differently had I watched the John Cusack one. And I will say, it's not that I don't like the movie. I think a lot of it works well and it's very of the time, and I think to criticise for some of the language and like the misogyny, it's like, that is just the way some men talk though as well, you know what I mean? I think it's realistic in that sense. But I don't know, it was hard not to turn on the TV series and just fall in love with the location, the characters, the stories, everything.
So I guess, like, should we kind of like, to some degree, structure like what was similar about them, like structurally, or just like anything, and then kind of the things that were like, because I think the things that were done differently and the things that were done similarly were interesting in both. Yeah,
because the movie, as far as I'm aware, is a very faithful adaptation of the book.
Exactly.
And even the author acknowledged that himself. Whereas, again, I kind of wasn't expecting the TV series now, they're not exactly the same. How could they be when you're talking about a 10-episode TV show and a movie? A nearly 2-hour-long movie. But the beats are incredibly similar throughout.
There's a great reverence to the moments that people will want to see in the TV series.
So it, like, both open with them going through this kind of ultimate heartbreak of theirs. The TV series, it's Rob and Mac, who she was engaged to, had seemed to be with forever, like they got on really well, and then
her brothers met that way.
Exactly. And then the relationship seems to implode, and we don't really know why until we follow throughout the series. That's one thing I did enjoy as well. I think it does, from a structural point, work well as a series, like tracking the different relationships throughout each episode. But for the movie then, it's the same, but it's Rob and Laura, and again, we meet them in their apartment, and they're breaking up, and he's like, just stay the night, whatever, when she's gone. But again, we're learning as the movie goes on that he's actually been such a bad person to her in so many ways, like has betrayed her in so many ways. Like, talk to me about it. Just that reveal, I was like, oh my God, you are a hideous, hideous person.
So I mean, like, we discover, like, later in the movie that ultimately he's, like, cheated on her. And like, also, like, I guess, like, I was trying to kind of give a bit of humanity to, like, what is the reason for it? Like, what's the nucleus of his, like, complacency with Laura in the first place? Which I feel like there's, like, one line that I was like, okay, is this a giveaway as to why you had faltering interest? Was that she used to be like a cool hippie-dippy, like laid back girl into similar-ish things as he was, but then she started taking her lawyer career seriously and cleaned up her act a bit, or like became an adult, and he was just like resentful of that. So again, like, even taking away the layers of like misogyny and just annoying fucking talk track, the essence of the book and the movie and what they're trying to explore is, and I asked this to a friend, and it was really interesting to have that conversation as like two single gals. Like, is it important to have a partner that you have like a lot of shared interests with? Is that more important than maybe like having shared values or kind of goals in life and structural things that you want to work towards? Like, what makes a better relationship and what makes you fit and feel comfortable and like build life? And who knows what the fucking answer to that is now, to be fair. I'm no...
Jury's still out. We will not be able to answer that today on Flop Culture.
That is not what this is about. But like there was like something a little bit more poignant in the air as to what the movie was trying to explore. And sure, then I suppose, he basically goes off and cheats on her, and she finds out, I can't remember the exact story of it, but like she finds out and they break up, and she moves out of the house. And and also, I guess, like, he only really starts to lose his mind when he realizes that she might have a love interest herself and like, sleep with him, which is like the real like betrayal.
That's the entire crux of it. Like, at least,
so weird.
I don't know, with TV, Rob, it was like, it was a love thing, it was a connection thing, but like, with the movie Rob, it's just this, it's so physical and like, ugh.
Yeah. Which again, like, thing of its time, but also something that I was curious about as far as just like, is this like what? Like, I wonder, like watching, I would love to watch it with a bunch of dudes and kind of figure out as to whether
is this reflective? Is this actually true? I'm sure it is. It's the thing.
Yeah. So like, in some ways, I feel like maybe both of them are completely like the level of movie and TV show that they were ever going to be, because maybe they just tap into what the experience would be like from either perspective. I don't know if I'm being like limiting in that way, but like, the interest and the intrigue of Rob is kind of that she seems like we don't really actually get the real crux of the issue with her and Mac in terms of things seem so rosy and good. And I think that's also part of the critique that it got a lot of the time. They were like, the things that like John Cusack or Rob in the movie did were like deplorable enough that you can kind of hate him, and then like he had this realization of the fact that he was wrong. Whereas like with Rob Zoe, it seemed that she was just kind of complacent and annoying, and you couldn't really actually like get to the bottom of like what is the thing that you're really afraid of. Because like her brother's also like, you like to like ruin everything and kind of like create problems for yourself. And
self-sabotage,
I'm like, give us some backstory. What happened to you, Rob? Who broke you? Like, I want to know, I want to connect, you know? And we didn't get that because the fucking second season to come out. But like, there wasn't enough of a hint to understand that. You kind of just get the impression that she's spiraling as she gets proposed to. So Mac proposes to her, and this is the point at which she essentially, goes into self-sabotage.
Yeah, he's in the middle of making dinner, so she's like, right, and she finds the ring. It's not even that he proposes. Yeah, she's rooting through something, finds the ring. Yeah. Is like, I need to go out and get cat food. We're out of cat food. Goes out, goes to the bar, cheats on him.
Yeah.
Which is just like, oh my. And I don't know, I probably should have seen that coming, but I didn't. And then when I saw it all transpire, I was like, oh my God, of course, that's what happened. Yeah. She goes back, obviously doesn't say this to him, but says like, oh, I found the ring, whatever. They agree to get engaged. But this only comes out then after the fact. Yeah. After they break up, Mac moves to England. She thinks she's never going to see him again, because we actually meet her a year after they split.
Yeah.
Then as it turns out, he's actually back in town. He's a new girlfriend.
And they're engaged.
What
a second
Spiral City.
Yeah, no, to be fair, you would be spiraling.
Truly, yeah.
Like
truly.
she was barely out of the spiral by the time that he was coming back, and sure, he sent her into loop again.
Yeah. That felt like more of a justified spiral than movie Rob.
I guess like this is the thing as well, is like I can kind of get the idea of being self-wallowing and like, you know, if you had a significant relationship that was going somewhere and you don't really even know why you sabotaged it, like still being whatever, caught up in your feelings a year later. But yeah, it just got messier after that. What do we think? I had a question there. Yeah, what do we think about her telling Mac, like after they're broken up and hanging out, the reasoning as to? Like,
I mean,
was that necessary?
Was it necessary? Probably not. And I think if it was for anyone, it was for herself. She wasn't thinking of Mac at all. But on the other hand, I'm kind of like, Mac's reaction, obviously I get the hurt and betrayal, but surely then at that point you've moved on with your life, or that's the kind of image he's trying to put forward with this new life with Lily and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of questioned his response and his level of anger.
Yeah.
And that unpacking, and then obviously them kind of, that moment kind of pushing each other back into each other's arms in some way. I found that a bit nuts, like.
It was a bit, like, obviously I got it from the dramatic arc perspective.
Totally,
that. But equally I was just kind of like, oh my God, how probable, if you felt that you were trying to get back with your ex, would it be that you'd be like, oh, so just to like pepper the situation here? I suppose maybe just to trigger a reaction and see as to whether they cared about it at all.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was, I guess like those were the kind of marked differences that I'm like, this is just, you're a chaos merchant, Rob, but I kind of love it. Like, I just like hearing a story about your friend being like, now why would you do that ever? That doesn't make sense. Yeah. But like, I can tell that you're kind of just spiraling, and I don't love it for you, but like, I love that we're having this story, and when you get over this, we're going to laugh at how much of a messy bitch you are.
Yeah.
Or like a messy bitch any one of us could be basically at any time. And I think that they were the interesting parts by comparison to the movie, in that like the movie very much sets up like, so the desert island top 5 memorable heartbreaks is basically him reflecting over the most memorable heartbreaks. And by and large, a lot of them are just kind of like, you know, I guess the underpinning thing is that he feels that he is a flop as a person. He feels like he's not that hot, he's not that successful and like whatever, career driven, and he always had proximity to like beautiful and cool women, or else pious women that he couldn't have sex with and then dropped. So, like, you know, he just had proximity to hotness that he wanted to tap and maybe align with himself with and feel a little bit more, like, solid or whatever. And maybe he felt the closest to that with Laura, even if she didn't necessarily have the same, like, likeness of things and, you know, tastes in music and lifestyle or whatever else that he had. Whereas with the TV series, I felt like it went a bit beyond that in terms of, yes, it, like, summarized that sense of, like, insecurity and maybe, like, mental, like, health. Like, there's, you know, there's, like, subtle, like, cues for when she starts smoking a little bit more and kind of, like, she does these, like, really subtle things that are pervasive that I think are, you know, they touch on, like, real life, like when you kind of see your friend slipping into, like, a bit of it, like, maybe not, like, depression per se, but just, you know, they're not really all right per se, but they're holding things together and kind of maybe doing, again, chaos merchant type activity. And I felt like that was interesting about it, was that it was just, like, subtle even as much as it was dramatic. But then also the stories kind of went away from just, like, I had a heartbreak and this, like, silly reason was why, you know, it kind of, and it like, introduced a new character in Clyde, the kind of normcore hottie that loves to climb. I loved him now.
I loved him, and I kind of like, and this was probably deliberate. Not that I hated him at the start, but it was just like, my God, these two seem so mismatched, and this is going to be an absolute disaster of a date, because he's the first date she goes on post Mac breakup, even though it's like a year later, and they just, like, he's not really that into music, and as you said, like, so normie. She even kind of goes to, like, leave the date at one point, but realizes she leaves her phone behind and has to go back, and
from that point then he won me over, because I was like, this guy is kind of funny. Like, he kind of knew what was going on. He knew that she was going to try and leave, and he won her over.
Even that whole mission with going to Parker Posey's character about buying the record collection.
I know.
Do you reckon he's the one? Was he the one for Rob?
I wanted to see that happen, because that was exactly, I feel like he was purposely placed in the TV series. I don't think that there's an equivalent character in the movie.
No,
that, like,
definitely
actually
not.
competes with Laura and kind of gives him something to actually think and a decision to make here as far as, like, what trajectory does he want to take. But yeah, I think that he was placed there for a reason, and I definitely, like, as soon as he walked in, I was just like, I'm going through therapy now. So, you know, I'm kind of like, yeah, he's like the secure attachment style that, like, if you're a messy bitch, you just wouldn't, like, it would be knocking on your head like, hey, I'm actually here for you, and you just be like, nah. Like, you know, totally interested in everything else. So I was interested in seeing how that arc would go, because, like, I think that, that's very much on the pulse of, like, people trying to understand themselves, edging towards 30, trying to figure out their lives, and feeling that, you know, 30 has, like, some level of urgency around configuring what the next steps in your life need to be, and just the complications of, like, of dating, of, like, reckoning with yourself and what's going on. And he was the nuggets that, like, I felt were, like, more compelling about the TV series. But apparently, like, in terms of critique, like, it did get really decent ratings, Rotten Tomato-wise and IMDb. And, like, even, like, The Guardian and The New York Times had, like, relatively decent critiques for it. But I think the main thing that they were saying that was, like, not as believable or something was that, one, that, like, Zoe Kravitz is just too hot to be this, like, everyday normcore person that, like, is having trouble dating and unable to kind of latch with someone, which I was just like, hey, I know pretty privilege is a thing, but, like, give her some kudos. There's some hotties out there that are struggling, you know,
but, like, also like, she can be a bit melty personality-wise. You know, I pulled out some of the interviews, because or reviews, I should say, because as you said, it did. I think it rated reasonably well. Now, as you said, there was a ginormous hype in the lead up to it, because it was this, like, adaptation of this cult movie and everything like that. I don't really know if it kind of made any real waves here. And then you also had the pandemic. So, like, this came out February 2020. So I feel like it was just swallowed up then. But some of the ones that I pulled out that kind of attempted to poke holes in it. So the Guardian one that you'd mentioned said, Kravitz is an able actor who shines in Rob's moments of genuine conflict, but is miscast for a role as a relatable everywoman whose self-pity is supposed to anchor a 5-hour show. It's hard to take her seriously when she saunters down the street saying, New York is full of people who make you feel not enough, or proclaims she's always dreamed of dating a musician. Which, I mean, I do get it, and it's also something she's said in the wake of the show being cancelled, that, like, they wanted to kind of dial down even the toxicness of her character and her thought processes behind things. One example she gave was when she meets Lily, Mac's new fiance, for the first time in the bar, and, like, she imagines, like, to beating the shit out of her and other people beating the shit out of her, which, like, not great, obviously, but, like, I think everyone can relate to that moment where you're just blood red with the rage.
100%.
You'd never do it. You never actually want it to happen. But you're thinking, fuck you, you're so smug and you have this life that I want and you're with this person that I was with. and I'm so angry about it, but I have to
You're
just be like...
definitely half hoping that they'll sit on chewing gum or something.
Yeah,
you know?
something just...
like banal kind of discomfort. You're like, yeah, that'd be great.
But you're just sitting there trying to be cordial then. It's the most frustrating thing ever.
Yeah.
She said, like, they really wanted to, like, pull that back, but she was very much... Because she's an executive producer on it. She was like, no, like this... She has to be this kind of flawed and a bit annoying and a bit rotten, like, and not figured out.
So a question, something that I also was trying to unpack about this was, is she a pick-me? Like, if we talk about, like, the kind of, like, the quintessential dude that's, like, soft boy or, like, a bit of a soft boy, fuck boy, I'm like, is she, like, the answer to, like, the desirable pick-me that, like, is a bit jaded and, like, you know... Yeah,
kind of, but I don't think she realises then. And to be honest, I think that's also, and you touched on it there at the start, I think that's also what might have put people off from watching it. I think because it is so music focused and music forward, and there's lots of references that are very niche. And to be honest, a lot of them went over my head, but I still like appreciated them and stuff. And
the ones I did, slamming out the wazoo.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like, I don't know, people who consider themselves like not that into music would probably be like, this isn't for me, this is too pretentious, this isn't accessible. Which is a shame, because I'm like, it's so much more than that, but it's also just to add to her character. And it's, of course, she's really into music. She runs a record shop. It's really important to her. These moments that are soundtracked by albums and artists and stuff like that.
And also there's enough like other characters in it that kind of give you a little bit of meat and bones. So it's not strictly only just getting annoyed by her, like...
Exactly, and they definitely aren't as... It's like, I don't know, they don't... I wouldn't say they're as pretentious or as pick-me as
they're
her.
grounding,
The two characters in the Davine Joy's character and...
Yes, Charisse and Simon is the friend's
Simon,
name. Yeah.
Because Simon has his own capsule episode as well, which
loved that.
So good.
Yeah, that was
gorgeous.
Yeah, exactly. And like it also like gave a little bit more substance to their friendship as well. Like it was interesting that they had dated before, and then, you know, he'd come out and realised that he was gay, and like that there was this like bit of discovery. Because I also think that there's like something interesting in like the friendship dynamics and how, you know, Rob being this like central character that like that kind of just not dramatizes all of her dramas, but just as like a stroppy kind of teenager means that they have to kind of tiptoe around her, but they have these whole lives. Like Charisse is trying to embark on her music journey and start this band, and then Rob does that nice thing of getting her the guitar, which is like this nice little kind of supportive act. And there was a lot of scope to kind of like, in terms of thinking of the longevity of the TV series, and did it actually have like actual scope to be a second, like for there to be a second series. Like probably I would have said cap it at 2, but give us the full story so we can like round it up nicely. But there were little driblets here and there where I could see like 2 episodes being dedicated to Charisse's journey in the music industry and maybe finding out what that looks like in New York and how that might have changed. And similar with Simon as well in the kind of LGBTQ dating scene, which I was like, I would be interested in seeing that. But yeah, missed opportunities.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny how like Simon is in Rob's top 5 heartbreaks of all time, and then she does not even register on his. Like it was. It's just I think the TV show is a lot, and again I know they're coming out at completely different times and it's completely different perspectives. I found the TV show a lot funnier than the movie. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, there were a lot of like punchy lines in there. Yeah. Like when I watched the movie. Again, I don't know. I have a hard time watching things from the past now, to be honest, because like as much as I'm trying to be like, this is just of its time, like,
some of it is like quite hard to stomach, and that's even like one of the reviews of the TV show from Pitchfork kind of highlighted that as well, and why it didn't work for this particular writer. So they said part of what made Nick Hornby's 1995 novel such a hit, leading to a 2000 movie adaptation, was its uncensored view into the psyche of stunted, self-pitying, supposedly sensitive straight men who obsess over stuff, and stuff is italicized. This fundamental maleness was well noted in reviews at the time. Hornby's books reveal a fascination with the sheer voodoo of what so often passes as masculinity, the weird ritual facts, the useless objects. Wrote the New Yorker, while Lad Mag Details was a bit blunter. Keep this book away from your girlfriend. It contains too many of your secrets to let it fall into the wrong hands. And they just kind of went into the fact that like even gender flipping it and stuff, which the TV series is, it kind of can't get away from what it is at its blood, which is this really singular, like toxic masculine viewpoint of women and dating, like it
edges on kind of like, without using buzzwords, it edges on like kind of a complacent movie that would be made by someone that's like an incel that's just really...
incel was the word, and I know it's such a fuzzy word, but like, and it's potentially too strong for this, but
it is probably too strong. But I was watching it and I was just a bit like, like someone reviewing this now definitely would have brought that up.
This was another good line that I saw. Again, this is from Amanda Hess from New York Times, and this was when she was talking about, how, when Hollywood like kind of desperately trying to like gender flip things. She wrote, these reboots require women to relive men's stories instead of fashioning their own, and they're subtly expected to fix these old films, to neutralise their sexism and infuse them with feminism, to rebuild them into good movies with good politics too. They have to do everything the men did except backwards and with ideals, which is why, again, I'm kind of glad I watched it. Like, my view of, when I think of High Fidelity, I'll think of the TV show, I won't think of the movie. And I think it's hard. If it had been a story on its own, I think it would have been this like gorgeous little, workplace kind of comedy, dramedy thing that had music at its core and pop culture at its core. But because it's living in the shadow of this massive, like, behemoth movie. It was never going to be, you know what I mean? To be honest, even if you wrote something that was like, well, it's not High Fidelity, but it's like loosely, it was always going to be, and it's always going to be compared. So in that way, I'm like, did it ever really stand a chance? I don't know.
I know, and I think that like the timeliness as well, probably of when High Fidelity came out. Like you're talking about Chicago, which is like just kind of looking at the musical like angle of it, like huge alt rock, proggy, post punky kind of a scene. So I feel like maybe part of also the fascination with it was that it was this like counterculture movie that was like very, very popular, that was capturing maybe a mood at a time and this kind of personality that maybe was quite commonplace. Whereas actually, like all of the things that you mentioned in terms of like the responsibility that this show would have had to do to try and level off some of the kind of toxic things that we remember from the movie, but also make it interesting and maybe more relevant to like a today story was happening. And then on top of that, there was just other elements where I was just like, how probable would it be now that there would be like a female vinyl like record shop owner in Brooklyn, and like it's made to seem like her apartment and the record shop is like modest and that like there's like some busy days.
The apartment's fucking huge.
Like gorgeous 60s, all like all the mods and cons of like that kind of like Mad Men era type furnishing in the gaff.
I want to
lives on her own.
Yeah, I want to redo my entire house now so that it looks like her pink living room.
I know.
And the bathroom and everything. Now the bathroom was mank as well, in the scene where she's watching Sopranos and she's in the bath on her birthday. I was looking at the tiles, I was like, Jesus Christ, girl, get a sponge out. But yeah, no, that's also like highly unbelievable. But again, I'm willing to suspend belief to look at nice pink walls.
But I kind of loved that, especially. I think that there was like things there that were interesting in that, like in the movie, it kind of does make note of, John Cusack's character inherits the record shop because he worked there as like a youngster and kind of just like became part of the furniture in the same way that his friends are. And the same happens for her, but it just seems like so much more improbable because like probably any record shops that happen, like I'm thinking of London more so, where you go to like a record shop that is owned by non like white huge brands are probably more grassroots and like maybe like the Kingston community and the reggae scene, where they got set up like small little pop-ups and they gain prestige over decades because they're one of the few places that do what they do in an area. So like I don't know, there was like a lot of room to kind of paint like an interesting alternative history to like how would this person exist in a New York, and like that also maybe something that was unrelatable because I'm just like it is kind of fantastical as to like how does this Zoe Kravitz character inherit this and like is still complacent about her life, mainly in the context of her love life, when there's all this cool shit that now would never really easily happen. Because
she says she buys it, like, so I'm like, how the fuck did you outrightly buy the building? If that is what's being implied, maybe I took that up wrong, but it is just crazy.
That was like, there was just kind of a couple of notes there where I was just like, I wish that it allowed the fantasy to go, because also like in the same kind of like just nonsensical way, Sex and the City and just how affluent all of them were, and like you just never ask any practical questions, but like you're just bought into the story, and like we live in this context, everyone's wearing Manolo Blahniks and running around the place,
I couldn't get anything in terms of viewership for it because it was on it's on Disney Plus over here, but it was on Hulu in the States, which is, they're all one over in the States basically, and like streamers are really cagey about actual viewing figures. But like I know I picked out a few kind of not great reviews here, but as I said, generally it was generally it was like pretty highly received, like, which is why like she's spoken herself now, Zoe Kravitz, about like Hulu themselves came out and said there were extensive talks about them renewing, and that there was energy and a want to keep it going, but like they just couldn't. And like Zoe said herself that the response that she got even from fans, the amount of letters, DMs, people on the street and women that looked like us, like that love for the show, it meant something to people. It was a big mistake. Huge. Like it's just, where do you think the show would have gone? Where would you have liked to have seen the characters end up? What do you think? If you're saying that, okay, look, the show does have a shelf life, I think it could have gone for one more season and wrapped the story up nicely.
Yeah.
Where does everyone end up? What's Rob doing? Who's Rob with? Is Max still on the scene at all? Simon, Charisse, tell me. I'd love to see your vision if you have one.
I just wanted to see more of Mac just because I'm thirsty, but like...
Oh, what a stunning man. Oh my God. Like Kingsley Benadire.
Yes.
Oh,
Barbie.
edible. Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yay, sorry. I was like, you are in something that I've seen very recently and I can't place it. It was literally Barbie. Yeah.
Kenergy, out the gap.
Kenergy.
Where would they have gone? Okay, I would see like Charisse maybe getting into the music industry, performing, kind of getting a bit of traction, but like deciding that the music life is not for her. What she wants to do is maybe be like an A&R person. So she works, like she gets exposure to like labels and stuff like that and kind of works in that. And like essentially crossing over to the personality that she's in The Idol, but in High Fidelity.
Yes.
And in a more grassroots kind of humble way. I don't know where Simon's character would have gone, but I really just wanted to go on that journey because he was just like a lovely reprise from Rob that I was like, I just want to see what this guy's about. He's just like quietly there, privy to all the information, always kind of like getting all of the story and the emotions out of Rob when she's throwing straps around the place. And I want to see how that dynamic would kind of, because I feel like there were like a lot of interesting home truths that he could like bring to her, kind of just as far as how self-absorbed she's. Like I think the arc of like the second season I would like to think is she goes to therapy.
Yeah.
Or she like does something, like they could, spin it around and make it fun and twee, but like that she kind of realizes that she's just a bit of a gal sometimes.
Yeah, after some kind of explosive row with Simon. I feel like they were due that. Like they were such good friends to her. Yeah. That was one of the other things I struggled with the movie. And again, maybe it's just because it was a male trio as opposed to this more kind of diverse pair. But like the friendship and the friendship dynamics were way more believable between Charisse, Simon and Rob, even when they were being like, well, predominantly Rob, even when Rob was being an absolute fucking asshole. With the three lads, I was just kind of like, okay, you work together and you all like music. And you're three...
And they're the sidekicks.
Straight white men,
and one of them is just like a really shy kind of like shadow of a man.
Yeah, I was just, it felt a bit one-dimensional, two-dimensional or something, whereas like you mentioned that moment of Charisse getting the instrument at the end and just Rob kind of realising and wanting to support her, or like Simon being there for him and bringing like for on her birthday and stuff like that. Like it's rooted in love, even when they do kind of have to get tough with each other,
exactly. Exactly all of that. I feel like there's like, I don't know, like Broad City is a thing of its own and it kind of is a bit zanier in terms of its tone, but I do think that there was just like, this could have been a contribution that was like maybe a little bit mellower in its tone, but certainly had like, Charisse would bring that energy and a couple of other characters would bring the kind of punchy, funny energy of New York to it. But that, it could kind of have like little snippets of like, what does it look like to be a young person, either figuring out your like adult life in New York. Maybe the record shop comes into question and like, I felt like a couple of things like that could have been interesting arcs, but ultimately that she has a growing moment and kind of just maybe she's on her own, maybe she's with, I would cross my fingers for Clyde because I just also like loved seeing him in a nice role because he was in White Lotus that first season and I was just like, you're just too good at being a dickhead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like he was so good at being the dickhead there that I was like, and I saw him in White Don't after having seen him in High Fidelity and it was just a good redeeming moment for him. For me, because I tended to believe actors when they act in things too well. I'm like, I don't know now, I'm a bit suspicious.
You're like, you're evil. you're like,
evil. Your likeness is like the kind of bro jock that just is complacent about everything. Is just like too close to the bone. But we'll give you a few brownie points.
Yeah,
for this. Yeah. So I just wanted to see him being a nice boy for a little while longer. Yeah. Maybe climbing some more rocks or something.
Fair. Yeah. I would just love to see Rob kind of actively pandering after him, pursuing him. Like I feel like he just replaced the Mac character, but like with not as much. You don't have as much history, so it's like there's probably a better chance of them rebuilding something. Yeah, but still, kind of moments to see Rob being an absolute crazy person.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you have any particular alternate universe? Ending for them.
I I don't know. I'm trying to think of it now. Like, I definitely see, just as we were talking about it, I can definitely see like Simon and Rob having some absolute blow up and that needing to be like and obviously Charisse is away and she's busy and Rob kind of struggling on her own and realising how much she was taking them for granted.
Yeah, actually. And probably Simon realising how much she needed like Charisse to kind of offset the like pandering to Rob's emotions all the time, probably that he has to do.
But and I think maybe it starts with her and Clyde kind of half seemingly trying to start fresh, and they're like trying to like date and take it like really, really slow, so as not to kind of sabotage things. But like she's kind of continuously being tempted by all these people in the background. I feel like the musician fella could come back up again, even though sorry, I will say on that, right?
Yeah,
that. Because, okay, so for anyone not familiar, but again, if you're listening, I would assume you've watched, right?
Yeah.
She meets this musician fellow, which again is supposed to mirror the movie because...
her mother plays.
Her mother plays a musician that John Cusack gets with in the movie, which I did like. I liked that connection.
Yeah.
TV Rob meets this, or goes to see a gig, and it's this Scottish guy.
Thomas Doherty?
Thomas Doherty, yeah.
I know
very
his
hot.
face, but I don't know
Yeah,
why.
again, I couldn't place the actor.
Yeah.
And anyway, they go to see him and like clearly they fancy each other or whatever, but she's kind of like not interested. She's still like undoing the Mac or whatever else.
Yeah.
They end up they go back to his place, which is where she learns that he's like just graduated high school, which makes him like 19, 20, and she's about to turn 30. So she obviously has a fucking come to Jesus moment, and it's like, I need to get the fuck out of here. This is your child. I'm going to leave, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then it's just like, later on then, she's after shagging him.
Changed her mind. At random, no explanation, no
And
real...
I like it.
What was the process for you?
Yeah, I'm like, there's no even turmoil where it's like, you don't even see, and I know it comes
She's just
back
like
after.
smugly like, I'm going to go see Liam. I'm like, excuse me.
Yeah, she wakes up in the bed and she's like, you're probably wondering how I got here. And like there is, Charisse and Simon are taking the piss out of her then later on in the shop where it's like, the child, like cradle snatch or whatever. And I'm just a bit like, what? Like...
Yeah.
Mad.
Very... But then like... Yeah, it was interesting. Maybe because she was also an executive producer and her mom has dated like quite a lot of younger men, like significantly younger men in RL. Maybe she was just like, let's leave it in there. Let's complicate the story. Let's make her messy and whatever.
Yeah, because it is like, it does bring into question her character because it's... You originally left this and we're not seeing any point
you had
of...
sense, then you decided nonsense.
Yeah, mental interrogation where it was like, okay, you just wanted to, because you could.
Yeah.
You were wanted to get into more music. I don't know.
Very sketchy.
Loved the Jack Antonoff cameo as well. That was extremely funny.
And Debbie
Harry!
Yeah.
I loved it.
Iconic.
I was like, I just love the idea of being that famous and that successful as a musician that someone just rings them up and you're like...
The lineup was insane.
Will you just come and do like 3 lines in this one episode of a show and then being like, yeah, absolutely. Playing yourself. Like, what a flex.
Dancing away in the sitting room. Yeah.
What a flex.
Yeah. So all in all, how do you rate it? Like, I know that you said that you loved it.
Genuinely loved it. And I would recommend it to everybody. If anyone is listening to this and hasn't watched, I found it like...
I'm pleased.
Again, it's probably one of the only, and we've done so many flops at this point now, it's one of the only ones where I can come out and be like, I genuinely loved it. And it's genuinely good. Because you watch a lot of shit and you can love it and recognise that it's shit.
Yeah.
This is so good. And I'm so frustrated that there just wasn't a will or a want to platform this story. And I'm wondering, like, ultimately why you think that is. Like, was it... Like, was it her character? Was it the fact that it was not believable? Was it the pandemic? Was it that it was female-led? Was it the legacy of the 2000s film? Was it all of the above? What do you think?
I mean, I imagine that it had to, like... I do think that, like, the pandemic was a tricky one. Also, the volume of TV that was coming out around the pandemic, that was, like, so qualitative. I don't think it compared very strongly to, like, a lot of other shows that were going on at the time. But I imagine that, like, maybe it just didn't have the kind of, like, capital appeal or something like that. Like, it was on Hulu, and I remember I had to, like, stream it on the illegal web to watch it before it was on Disney. So, like, I just can't see as to, like, how they would have tracked what the demand for it was in terms of, like, pumping any... And, like, especially if they're like, okay, we're going to have to do this over the pandemic, maybe, or immediately after it's, you know, possible to start shooting. I feel like there probably was some kind of mathematics that wasn't mathing for them, but like the other side of the coin, like, I don't know, Zoe's just like, she thinks it was because there's like very few stories that like are centering coloured women. Who's to know? I think the opportunity was like massive in that like other shows that I watched at the time, like Insecure. Have you ever seen that with
No,
Mr.
but I'm
Ray?
dying. Another one on my list.
You should watch it.
Because everyone
It's so
says it's really
great.
good. Yeah,
It's so good. I felt like it was of a similar tone to that, where it's just like everyday, relatable, kind of messy, but somewhat like put together people. That
yeah,
you
funny,
assume...
but not straight comedy, not sitcom.
Exactly.
Not, yeah.
They're like, yeah, exactly. So I felt like it was sitting in that realm of TV that if it had like another season or two, it could have done really well, or there was like really good scope to make it like a substantially good TV show, while also like having a lot of levity to it. And I just don't know if anyone wanted to do the work, is my opinion on it. Probably the writers and the, like, you know, the person that adapted it, but no money. No money. It's all about the money. Money. Yeah.
Why should people watch it, in your opinion, if, again, they haven't watched it yet?
Just watch it because it's kind of hot. And yes, it's a bit pretentious, but it's kind of hot. I'm very fickle, you see. So
Okay.
I'd give something a whirl. Like The Idol, I probably will watch it because Moses Sumney is in it. Like there's things I'm like, I don't enjoy this, but I'll probably watch it because of beautiful things. So if you were a person that enjoys like also half an hour, favourite format of TV show.
Stunning.
Consume it.
Perfect.
Hoof it up.
I'm over 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Give me a good 30, 25. It's snap. You'll bounce along
Exactly.
this. It's great.
Exactly. No, there's no time in it. So like, yeah, if you like punchy, short shows, a bit of a vibe, it is giving like a lot of like style, and if you like Zoe Kravitz or know anything about her, she's just enjoyable to watch. She did do a very like kind of convincing performance throughout it. Just watch it because it's hot and it's fun and the music's great.
It's so good.
Yeah.
That needle drop where she starts listening to Nikes and she's like walking around.
Yes. Yeah,
so
I know.
good.
I gained so much music from it. Like I was just, like I said, shazamming out the wazoo and just like adding it to like playlists in tandem with her creating hers. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Yeah, do you have any, as a musician, do you have any hard and fast rules about playlisting, as she does? And so does John Cusack's character, I suppose.
Yeah. I don't make mixtapes anymore. I do a lot of playlisting, not hard and fast rules around it. So that was interesting. I'm just kind of like a vibe. So, you know, one vibe might be pretending that you're on a beach dancing as Beyonce in Drunk in Love. And then like anything that fits that bill, be it kind of slow, fast, or kind of, you know, saucy. So that's kind of me. It's just like imagining myself in a specific mood, or if I'm like, I feel kind of ill and tired.
Okay.
What music accompanies that?
I have a playlist in mind at the minute that's just like songs that feel cold, like cold weather, but not like obviously like not like holiday, Christmas adjacent, just like
wintry.
Yeah,
like going for autumn walk.
Yeah, and like it's kind of nighttime and it's like chilly and
That's
frost.
lovely.
Yeah. I'm gonna get on that after this.
Please link that so I can listen to it.
I will. I absolutely will. Senita, it's been such a pleasure. Where can people find out more about you, listen to you?
Yeah.
Tell the people.
My name is Senita. I'm on the internet as Senita Appiakorang. I am not a senator, I'm a singer. And I am in a band called Sister Phoenix with weird spelling. You'll find it if you look at my Instagram. And doing a bit of singing on different people's music in 2024. So ultimately, if you find me on Instagram, you'll see me spam you about things.
What a tease. Oh my God, that's so exciting. Please check out the Sister Phoenix record because it's so good. It's so good. And I got to see it perform live and it was great.
Yeah,
it was so good.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have you back. Have a think about your next
very
flop.
good.
And you will be back because this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Great fun. Great crack.
Senita, thank you so much for joining me on Flop Culture.
I'm delighted.
Huge thanks again to Senita for coming. Senita, please come back. Let's talk about other things. I loved speaking to you. I will leave all of her links in the show notes below if you want to check her out and check out her work, which I highly recommend doing. Finally, top of the flops. Who is it? Who could it be?
You're a flop.
Top of the flops this week. I'm torn, girls. I'm not going to lie, right? I didn't know whether to pick. Okay, actually, maybe I need to give context even before I get into this. I thought this was a massive conversation that was happening, by the way, but I think it's just whatever two accounts that I follow, two meme comedy accounts that were talking about this. Or maybe it was a TikTok thing. I don't know. There's been a lot of discussion around Beauty and the Beast, the original Disney animated film, not the live action one. And the moment at the end, spoilers for Beauty and the Beast, if you haven't seen it, at the end when the Beast transforms back into the prince because the spell is broken because they've fallen in love. It's true love and it doesn't matter that he's a beast. Bella's like, give me that, gives a bit of that, and Beast transforms back. And they're talking about the scene in which he transforms back and he becomes long-haired fella, whatever, Prince Eric. No, that's Ariel, isn't it? That's Little Mermaid. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's looking at Belle he looks at Belle and Belle kind of looks back at him and initially is kind of like squinting as if to be like, what the fuck? Change back. You know what I mean? Like Belle is like, Uno reverse card. Like she's not really about it, right? So there's been a lot of talk about that online. So I will say, I actually think she was dead right in the sense that I would have had that same reaction because maybe I'm the flop, girls, and this is what I meant when I said at the start of the episode. Flop isn't necessarily a dirty word. I'm happy to be a flop if it means I'm on the right side of history. Beast, before he turns into the prince, is sexier than the prince. There's something about the face. The face of the beast is hotter. More hair. Something, the prince's face isn't right. And I don't know if he always looked like that or if it's a spell. Not about it. But anyway, this goes back to who is top of the flops, right? Is it Beast when he stops being a beast and becomes a prince? Or is it Belle for not... This entire plot of the movie is, I'm standing up for myself. I'm an independent woman. I love to read. I don't need anyone. Now, sorry, does she have Stockholm Syndrome is the thing? Probably. She has Stockholm Syndrome. But I still think, is it floppy behaviour to not stand by your morals and stand by what you believe in and take one look at that prince and go, nah, not for me. I just think it's a bit gutless, you know? Anyway, take your pick. Top of the flops. Prince. Wait. Yeah. No. Prince after. No. Beast when he becomes the prince. Flop. Belle not just turning on her heels and running when she saw the prince. Because that's what I would have done. And I would have had no qualms about it. I will tell you that right now. Anyway, not sure what happened there, but we are back next week. It's our last episode before we go on Christmas break. And I am leaving you with a Christmassy flop. A very divisive Christmas movie that I actually have not seen. I will have seen it by the time the episode is out, obviously. So excited to chat about that and excited for you to meet my guest. And as I said, then we will be taking a few weeks off. And then we're back better than ever in the new year. This has been Flop Culture, edited as always by Adam Shanahan. I will see you next week. Goodbye.